Yeah, for sure.
Hello, and welcome back to The Empowered Patient with Dr. Tiffany Troso. Well, today I have a powerhouse guest, and we're really looking forward to speaking with him. He is shaking up the healthcare world from the inside out. Please meet Dr. Todd Otten. He's a board certified family physician with over 20 years of experience, not just in clinics and hospitals, but also in the skies in the U.S. Navy, where he served as the Naval Flight Surgeon of the Year for the entire Atlantic Fleet. He's the co-founder of Our Quadruple Aim, a movement pushing forward better healthcare systems, one that prioritizes the patient experience, quality care, lower costs, and provider wellness. So he's also the author of Ripple of Change, which is a bold and very honest look about his personal journey through burnout and deeper dysfunction in medicine in general. Now based in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where he works with emergency care physicians. Dr. Otten is also the lead catalyst and board chair of Medicine Forward, and he continues to advocate for real and lasting change in his healthcare across the industry. You are going to love his energy as well as his honesty and his ideas about healthcare reform. So let's get into it. Hi, Todd.
Oh, wow. I'm honored and humbled to be here. What an introduction. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. So honored to have you here. So I'm very excited for you to share with all of our listeners some of the really amazing things that you're doing in healthcare reform right now. You're one of the biggest movers and shakers that I know, and so I would love for you to share some of your most important projects right now.
Oh, wow. Yeah, thanks. I think I probably would default to a few things. As I've gotten into this journey of, networking and advocacy, beyond the little bit of direct care that I do, there are a lot of amazing groups out there, right? You
Sure.
could go name after name after name after name. But I think one of the things that I've noticed is everybody seems to want to be in their own little wheelhouse at times. And I think if we
Mm-hmm.
can find that magic of having those Venn diagrams overlap, if you will, I think that's where we're going to see some real movement. So, two big projects that I'm involved in. Well, the first one is with Medicine Forward, and
Mm-hmm.
we're experimenting with a decentralized hybrid approach to organization, which has really inspired and empowered people to just kind of try some things. And I'll stand up and show my T-shirt as I always dress very formally
Hey,
these days.
I need one of those. Do I get one?
We can make that happen.
Okay.
Absolutely,
All right. I want
absolutely.
one.
And in conjunction with Medicine Forward, where the mission statement is catalyzing positive change so
Mm-hmm.
patient physician relationships can flourish, we're working on a documentary that has some amazing individuals supporting it. Um, and I don't want to give it all away. I think we've got a little clip maybe we can show at some point in this, but
That'd be great.
ultimately, we want to really pull back the curtain for the American public as to what is really happening, because I don't think a lot of people truly understand the level of dysfunction that's going on in the United States within healthcare.
Yeah.
And beyond just telling the issues that exist with the dysfunction, the latter half of the film, we're planning to incorporate an evergreen call to action. And we're nailing it down because the story is being built as these airplanes taking off into the sky, if you will. um, but the reality is, in my mind, if we can solve how to get the 300 million plus patients in this country who have experienced the frustration at times with healthcare activated, that's when we're going to see significant transformation of where we're at now. So I know that was a little long-winded. Sorry, I get excited, but those are the two biggies that we're working on.
No, absolutely. And I'm glad that you shared all of that. Let's get into that in a little bit more granular of a way. So as I might have mentioned, my platform is really to help create, primarily in the oncology world right now, but in general, the empowered patient. And so I know as an emergency room physician, as well as working with family practice, I'm sure that you have come across the lack of control that so many patients often have, particularly in our system. How do you think that this movement will affect them?
Well, it won't be like flipping a switch for sure. I think the care delivery in this system, unfortunately, is so siloed in
Yeah.
many instances that it makes it very difficult for patients to navigate it. Part of unwinding that is frankly going to be through education to patients, letting them know that there are other resources to help them navigate the system. Whether that's a friend, whether that's a family member, whether that's a colleague, whether that's an organization that you could hire.
Sure.
They're out there, and there's actually physicians that do this too. That's a In the short term, that's a way to make it happen. But I think in the long term, we collectively really need to do a better job of laying out the framework, the roadmap for patients so that they're not lost in this shuffle, giving
Hmm.
them better access to their records, et cetera. There's so many things we could do. And a lot of our colleagues really believe that if we can drill down the care delivery system to communities as opposed to doing it at scale, that's going to help with that. And actually, I agree. I think we've gone in the wrong direction. That bigger is better when
Hmm.
it comes to healthcare delivery. I've worked in a critical access hospital where all the clinicians knew one another, and if you needed to pick up the phone and get a hold of somebody, or the radiologist needed to call me with a bad
Yep.
result, and actually I told him, I said, "Hey, Mark, could you please just call me with a normal report one time so that every time you call me, it's not some horrendous diagnosis."
Of course.
But those relationships, they're critical, and I think we have got to get back to that. We just have to.
No, I agree. Not only just for the patients, but for the physicians as well. Working as a team and collaboratively is really part and parcel of what we have, always done in medicine. And I feel that really the corporatization of medicine has really taken us away from that. And I agree with you. We're all so siloed. Um, so in your practice, for example, if you had a patient that had particular medical problems, how do you go about your referrals? Is it usually by name, by persons that you know?
Typically, yes. So probably two parts to this, I would say. So when I
Hmm.
was practicing full time, I would say you kind of get into your colleagues that you know or that you trust, or that you've built some relationship with,
Right.
and usually you had a couple, and some of it would depend on insurance or where the patient lived. So that was the prominent, or not prominent, but the primary driver of those referral patterns, if you
Sure.
will. But even then, it speaks back to the relationships, right? Now that I'm
Hmm.
doing sort of this episodic part time, we were calling it complicated disease management. So essentially,
Hmm.
somebody would come in who was getting lost in the system or didn't feel like they could find their way. And I could spend
Hmm.
an hour, hour and a half with them, go through all their chart and send them out with a plan. I would pick up the phone and call
Right.
their primary care clinician. And beyond that, I typically would give the patient my information so that they were getting stuck. They could reach back out to me and then I could try and help them navigate it. But I had the benefit of time,
Right.
and where we're at now with this fee for service RVU generating
Right.
machine, there just isn't that time for most of our colleagues. They're stressed just to get the interaction completed and not have 3 or 4 hours of charting at night. Um, right? I mean,
Nope.
it's
Speaking of the choir here, singing to the choir.
pajama time is like a
All right.
swear word in some people's houses, I'm sure. So yeah, I think we just have to think differently how we're doing this. We have to think differently how we're compensating clinicians to make this happen. And part of that, frankly, where that money is going to come from is getting rid of the administrative bloat
Hmm.
that has been created over the last 40 years or whatever. In Ripple of Change, I make the comment from the mid to late 70s, I believe, to I think it was 2010. Administrative increase in terms of number of administrators versus physician was 20x, not 20%, 20x, meaning you just created 20 times the amount of administrators for every physician that was added. And who's seeing the patients, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
come on.
And the physicians are like, "Can I have a pen? Can
Right. Yeah, right.
I
Can I have a
have a
three by
pen?
five card and a
Can I,
pen and a
does anybody
phone, and
have
we can
wait,
make this all work.
exactly. Can I put a desk in one of these rooms? Yeah, so I can't agree with you more. So it sounds like you're doing a little bit of sort of how I'm approaching care at this point. So as you know, I left Memorial Sloan Kettering in August after 25 years of working for, one of the biggest cancer institutions in the world. And although patients would get fabulous care there, it was becoming increasingly more difficult to function there as a physician. And I found it extremely frustrating when I had very sick patients who had cancer and a large amount of emotion and family members with emotions and questions. And you have this much allotted time. And it just, you never, no matter how hard you tried, I never felt like I was able to give the patients everything they really needed. And so I personally saw that there's this like big divide between, what patients needed and what physicians in the clinic can actually provide. And so I'm providing a service now, which is, I'm calling it concierge medicine, all that some has some negative connotations to it. Essentially, what I'm trying to do is be the patient's physician advocate. And so I do like you do. I'll review all of the patient's records, I'll review all their pathology, and I will sit with them for an hour plus, whatever it takes until they understand their diagnosis, their treatment options, what an estrogen receptor is, what's the difference between a PET scan and an MRI, and why did you get one and not the other? All these things that, get clogged up in the patient's brains, and then they have mistrust in their own physician because they don't understand. And then there's people, other people, families, Facebook, the internet, all chirping at them about other things, and they don't even have time to ask their doctors, well, what do you think if I take fish oil? Is that okay while I'm on chemotherapy? And just having the ability to spend the time with the patients as a physician, I find to be extremely rewarding and so beneficial for the patients. And what I've been doing basically are second opinions. And same thing, I'll just pick up the phone after discussing it with the patient and just call the oncologist and say, hi, I met your lovely patient, and this is what I saw, and I agree with you on this. Sometimes I consider this option, but I think I agree completely with what you're doing, blah, 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 blah. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Patient is thrilled. She has so much more confidence. She's calmer now because now somebody's corroborated the story for her. And now she also understands better, so she can also participate better in her care. So I'm sure you're finding a lot of that as well if you're digging through these complicated cases.
100%. I agree with you. And I think it's really almost a fantastic example of the quadruple aim, if you will, because if you spend that time and don't just randomly order a test or add another medicine, and again, I'm not saying this is what everybody does, but we know this happens, right? And all of a sudden somebody comes in with a medication list of 20 and it's like, oh my gosh, how did we get here? um, but you've hit on definitely three of the four components of the quadruple aim, just even in that short discussion: patient experience, quality care, the wellness piece to the clinician, but also the lower costs. When
Mm,
you spend that time and make those solid decisions, the total cost of care tends to go down. And I'll give you an example without getting into the granular detail. I saw a young lady who was on this really long, really troublesome journey through the healthcare system.
mhm,
And I dug through the chart and I kept coming back to this one medication that I thought was a side effect contributing to a lot of it. And I didn't wanna, jump to conclusions, so I saw the patient, we went through her whole history, and sure enough, I came to the exact same conclusion after we spent an hour going through things. And I said, "Hey, would you like me to stop this? And I'll see you back." Sure enough, saw the young lady back, and the spouse was with her at this visit, and I was like, "Oh boy, this is either gonna be really good or really bad."
right.
Fortunately, it was really good. She
Good.
was way better and
Oh,
was
good.
able to go back to work, and, like, I think about how much money was saved for the healthcare system with that, whatever it cost to see me for that hour. I mean, it was tens of thousands of dollars that were saved as a result of that one interaction, taking the appropriate time and doing what was correct instead of compressing it into a
Hmm.
15-minute rather fee for service
Which is a
rat
midget say.
race.
Right.
That's
Right.
right. Yeah, there you
So,
go.
like,
Right,
no,
right.
that's not really a nice word. No, that's true. I'm dying to know, what was the medicine? Do you remember?
Prazosin,
What is that?
alpha blocker.
Oh, okay.
So
Interesting.
yeah, without I don't want to get too far into the weeds with it because then it might be giving, too much away. But
Yeah, no, no,
yeah,
that's
and
interesting.
I use that medicine too. It's a great medicine,
Hmm.
and but it's one of those things where, when you don't have the time to kind of look at everything and you're checking all these boxes and
Hmm.
making sure you coded things correctly and educating and all these other things that you mentioned, right? The human brain can only do so much in 15 minutes.
Right.
It
Right.
seriously, and I don't even think with a machine learning on this, it would have been picked up. This was one of those art of medicine kind of cases,
Hmm.
right? And that
Yep.
requires a human being. So anyways, it was definitely a win for that particular individual.
No, I agree. And I also feel that you don't oftentimes in the clinic situation where it is so rushed, and even when your nurse comes in with you and she may take the medication history, for example, I would unveil later on that, a patient is actually taking a whole bag full of supplements that she didn't mention because she doesn't consider those medicines, right? And so you learn these things to dig through that I don't know that a computer would know to ask. So, the patient that I started on a chemotherapy that should have been pretty benign and should have been well tolerated. She ended up in, almost frank hepatic liver failure. What's going on? So we scans and blood tests, whatever. I finally sat the patient down. I was still in the clinic at this point, and I said, what else are you taking? Are there other things what else did you change your diet? Just went through the whole thing. And turns out she was taking a whole bunch of supplements that she had gone to, an acupuncturist who had some alternative medicines that were supposed to help her immune system, what have you. She didn't know better, but she didn't know to tell me.
Hmm.
And so I had to convince her to stop them. And lo and behold, her liver got better and she could go back on the chemotherapy that was actually going to save her life. And so, without, spending the time to really dig with the patients, you can miss major things like that could have affected her life.
For sure. And I think we're seeing this a lot
Yeah.
in how it's affecting patients and their outcomes and so on and so forth. It's just we're on this, yeah, we're really on this hamster wheel of profit generation in so many places to the detriment of not only patients but also clinicians.
No, it's
Our
true.
colleagues are getting so frustrated with the climate that many of them are stepping away, which is also exacerbating the problem, right? There's less of us for access,
Yeah.
myself included, right? I'm not seeing patients full time. And, Tiffany, at this point, I'm in my late 40s. I'm supposed to be
You're a baby.
full time seeing patients. And here I am, causing trouble and rattling cages. Although I think there's going to be some some positive benefits to that. So
I'm
I
sure.
guess it's the trade off.
I mean, you're really making quite a movement. Actually, if you don't mind, do you think that we could show some of that clip from the
Yeah, from the documentary, that would
I would
be
love to see it.
yeah, that would be fantastic.
I'm sure a lot of our fans would like to see that too. Okay. Can you share your screen?
Oh, sure, yeah. I'll let me see if I can do that. I will make an effort here.
Everybody has to see what kind of noise Miss Dr. Otten is making here. There we go.
Can you see my screen?
I can. Yeah, why don't you hit full screen? That's perfect. I don't hear it though, Todd.
Uh-oh. Let me try again. I think there's a button I'm supposed to hit when I share. Oh, there it is. I didn't hit it. We'll try again.
Okay.
I pray that the attention I give to those who put themselves in my hands be rewarded with happiness. And in honor of the knowledge I've received from my teachers, I swear to care for anyone who suffers, prince or slave. If I ever break this oath, let my gods take away my knowledge of this art and my own health. Here speaks a citizen, a servant of people. May I be destroyed if I betray these words.
We're on a not a good trajectory right now as a result of profits over people. It needs to be the other way, people over profits.
It gives me chills. I honestly, the hair standing up on my arms, that still gives me chills.
I'm not gonna lie, it gives me chills too. And actually, that's a shortened version of
Yeah.
the teaser. The some of the initial versions were physician heavy in terms of the voices. And
Mm.
obviously, as a physician, a lot of my friends are also physicians, and you reach out to your friends and your colleagues when you're starting a project. But as we've gotten further into this, the stakeholders are getting expanded.
Yeah.
Hospital CEOs, administrators, nurses. We want to get the voices of some patients, some business people, etc. But the first handful of times that I watched it, I cried because I've lost four of my colleagues to suicide in my career, including one of my partners. How do you deal with that? and how I was told to deal with it, go see patients the next day. You
Yeah.
know, it's not right.
So
We're
sorry,
human
Todd.
beings.
Yeah.
I can tell it even chokes me up now just talking about it. It's, and I think this is what we're trying to accomplish with this project, is to really show the American public what is going on. They deserve to know why, when they go into a visit, many of them are coming out frustrated. Well, think about it. If 50% of physicians are burned out or close to being burned out, there's a 1 in 2 chance as a patient you're seeing a clinician that is far from their best. I mean,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Is that what we want? No, not at
No.
all.
Oh, I'm so sorry. How many years
Thanks.
ago was that?
Oh boy. 6 years ago. Yeah, 6 years ago. But like, Tiffany, a lot of like everything else in our career, I was taught to stuff everything in a box.
Right.
And so that went right into the box with like 1,000 other things. And
Sure.
that box got opened up last year, and I've started to process a lot of those things. And I
Yeah.
guess I'll digress for half a second. If you've got a history of trauma, which I think all of us are exposed to trauma in some capacity, get help. If you need help, get help, process it, get a therapist, get a counselor, talk about it. If you've got a colleague that seems like they're struggling, ask them, are you okay? You
Hmm.
literally might save somebody's life, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, and to a lesser degree of severity, obviously. I mean, the amount of drugs and alcohol use, divorce rates in physicians, just because, things are not working right for them. Life is not flowing the way it should. I I can tell you that's, as an oncologist, which I chose, freely chose, wanted to take care of people with breast and gynecological cancers. But, by the end of the day, depending on what you were dealing with, extremely sick patients, a dying patient. Then the next room is the angry patient. The next room is the crying, and I don't mean to just put them in boxes, but you never knew what you were going to find when you opened the door to the next exam room.
Hmm. That's
Yet on
true.
the other side, you have administration, right? Not looking at all the humanity that you're providing for your patients and your intellect and your experience that you're giving them. They just care about, how many new visits did you see this week? You were 7 minutes late, for the meeting this morning. It was just like, what? Can I take that 7 minutes off from the 1:08 p.m. that I was up until writing my notes for tomorrow? Like, it's just, you can't expect a physician to be working at full kilt on all cylinders at all times. And that's essentially what our system is requiring us to do. We have to work faster, smarter, more efficiently, but yet are not given the tools or the assistance to actually do that.
Yeah, and it's gotten progressively worse over time, obviously, with the compression of the visits and all the additional requirements. And frankly, I think part of our training has been, used against us because we were taught to just do more, work
Hmm.
harder, put yourself second, put the patient first.
Yep.
And just more and more and more and more and more has been added on to that
Right.
over the years. I did just as in a quick example, I did a calculation of how many clicks I had made in my career prior to getting burned out, and I put it in. It's in Ripple of Change. It was, I think, at that point I'd been practicing, in residency and all these other things, and so you have a varying level of busyness, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. The point is, it was almost 18 million clicks.
Not surprised.
We have the highest paid individuals entering data.
Right. Data
How
entry.
work? I mean, we don't have the pilot of a plane flying the plane, navigating, serving, acting as a steward or a stewardess,
Right.
the baggage handler. Oh, by the way, starting the whole time we're doing this, do we? No.
I know. I know.
Aviation actually, and I think we've got things to learn from aviation, particularly around sleep and its importance. They are
Hmm.
very strict on that, and rightly so. Also, they have a great mechanism for sharing safety concerns pretty ubiquitously. And I'm not an aviation expert per se, but I think there's some things to learn there for sure.
I'm sure. I'm sure there is. And I think that they're much more forward facing in terms of, speaking out about what's going on with them. Whereas, as you were saying before, physicians are taught to sort of put it in a box and suck it up, buttercup. Is that where that came from?
Oh boy, that phrase has taken on a life of its own in regards to the documentary. That's
I
for
used to say
sure.
it to my kids all the time when they're little. They
Well,
still laugh about it.
I think in one version or another, as physicians, we were taught that going through training.
Right.
Like just keep working. Don't drink too much water if you got to be in the OR a whole much time. We don't want you to have to take a bathroom break. So suck it up, Buttercup. But then in the context of all these interviews, it seems like it's coming up quite a bit. And actually, at this point, the working title is for the documentary is "Suck It Up, Buttercup."
Love it.
Um, you know what?
That's
It's
great.
it's it's grown on me too, and I think it'll catch people's attention. So
Absolutely. No, I
yeah,
think
so
that's
it's
great.
exciting. Yeah.
That's really great. So where are you in your fundraising to get this documentary produced?
Great. Yeah. Wonderful question. We're about 20% of the way into the
Okay.
fundraising, and I think the interesting part of that, Tiffany, is is really a grassroots effort.
Hmm.
We we intentionally made the threshold for people to get involved to be not overly burdensome, and I'm not going to get into the numbers per se, but as a result, people who want to get on board have been able to get on board, and the word is starting to travel. And so I don't think it's a function of if we're going to meet our goals to get this project over the finish line. I think it's going to start to become a function of how quickly is it going to happen. And then ultimately, yeah, I might get in trouble for saying this, but we're going to try and get it released on September 17th of this year, which is National Physician Suicide Awareness Day. And I think the fact that we have to have a day for that is telling in and of itself,
Hmm.
um, that that's the state of affairs. And I ask patients and non-clinicians, and I'll mention that, or I'll mention that we lose about a doctor a day in this country, and the deer in the headlights looks, the drop of the mouths, the "Are you kidding me? That's happening?" And I'm like, "Yeah, not only is it happening, but it's been going on for a while,
Right.
and it gets stuffed under the rug way too much, and it needs to be out there so that we can work collaboratively, as doctors and patients to turn this thing around."
Yeah. No, absolutely. So how would people get involved if they were interested in contributing to the production of the documentary?
Oh, for sure. I probably the easiest way is get a hold of me on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
I am very active on LinkedIn. So send a direct message to me. I will get back to you. The other
Perfect.
physician who's helping drive this project is Mary Ann Wilbur. She is a geontologist that
Hmm.
stepped away a few years ago. She wrote a book called The Doctor Is No Longer In. So if you reached out to her as well, but in terms of I don't know, the entrepreneurial
Uh-huh.
investment angel doesn't have a problem asking people for money guy, that's probably me.
Got it. Perfect. Well, I'll also put that information in the show notes, but you can find Todd Otten on LinkedIn. I think that's how I met you.
I believe so. Yeah,
That was a
you
while
were.
ago.
Yeah, it was. It's been a fun journey, and you know what? And just to double click on that, Tiffany, I think there are so many wonderful people out there who are ready to do something. And again, not everybody has the time, or maybe they don't feel like they have the talent, but everybody can contribute to a project in a financial capacity. And I'm not saying it needs to be the
Sure.
documentary, but
Right.
skip a cup of coffee.
Right.
Donate that $5 to a nonprofit that is trying to improve the landscape. I would encourage everybody to do something like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I also think that from the patient-facing side, I don't think most patients really understand what's going on. I think they're unhappy with the progress of healthcare and how healthcare is being administered at this point, but I don't know that they're really fully informed that it goes way beyond the doctors. I think that we don't that the United States, our news, what have you, I don't think that they're really properly representing what the problem is. I know that people are, anti-insure medical insurance companies right now because of all the things that have been going on in the social media and what have you. But, in general, I don't think that most patients realize how poorly doctors are often treated. I think they'd be
I
upset.
I think you are spot on. I totally agree with you, and My hope in about 6 months, there will be a good percentage of patients that are no longer uninformed as a
Right.
result of what we're doing. Um, but you're right.
Sure.
Even as an example, with my co-author Joshua, he and I had been together as doctor patient for over a decade, and he remembered coming in when I was either getting to burnout or maybe right on the cusp of it or whatever, and he had no idea, and he made the comment like, "I didn't you were very callous that day, like cavalier, like you weren't there." And it was
Mm,
such a departure from the norm. And looking back on it, he's like, "Oh, no wonder why you were like that. It
mm,
was a mess in the
sure.
background."
Sure.
So yeah, we need the more we talk about it and do these projects and really illuminate it, hopefully it'll
Yeah.
change.
I at one point in the last, 2 years prior to my finally retiring from clinical office practice, I think I would come home probably 4 out of 5 nights a week and cry. Like at the dinner table. I would just cry. And I couldn't even explain half the times why I was so upset. It wasn't necessarily something happened with a patient. It was just the whole thing, the whole burden of the whole thing. And there was just no reprieve. And it just never felt like you ever were able to get ahead of your work or to do something positive in the system that you were working in. It was just, there was no, I don't know, not a healthy environment. But at any rate, let's talk about something more fun. What do you like to do when you're not shaking up the healthcare system?
uh, let's see. Well, I have a lot of hobbies, I suppose. I like to golf. I still play soccer in a competitive
Really?
competitive men's league. Even though
Nice.
3 ACL tears later, I still go out there and
Oh, we
limp
have
around
something
the
in common
field.
there. You didn't even know. So did you play in college?
I did not play soccer in college, but
Okay.
I did run track and field at a Division I school.
Nice.
I was a long jumper and a sprinter, believe it or not, back in the
Yeah, I
day. But
do. I believe it.
yeah, and I like going to my kids' events,
Hmm.
watching them do sporting activities, and I'm actually working on book number 2 around the concept of trauma and addressing your trauma, and I do enjoy writing. It's very cathartic for me. So
Hmm.
a handful of things, family outings, etc.
How many kids do you have?
Four children.
4. Wow.
Busy,
Busy
busy.
household. Busy, busy. Yep.
Yep, yep, yep.
You're younger than I am, though. I'm an empty nester now. My youngest went off to college, so I have one in medical school, one in business school, and one just started college. So,
How's it going for the one in medical school? How's that journey been?
you know, Luke, my oldest, I say he was born to be a doctor. Like he literally has I couldn't imagine him being anything else. His persona is so physicianish. He's always been an old soul as a child. And it's frustrating. He likes it, but he likened it the first year and a half to drinking from a fire hose, right?
Oh
They
yeah,
they
yep.
just I mean, everything that we learned in 2 years, cut it down to like 14 months they had to do it in. They do a lot more clinical now. He's looking into going into orthopedic surgery, and
Okay,
each rotation that he does has its own flavor, of course, and but he's rolling with it. He's still happy with his decision, and
good.
he looks like he's going to be pretty successful. So, my second son, Tyler, was he graduated from Princeton May 2024. He was a lacrosse player and he got caught in COVID. And so he had an extra year of eligibility. He graduated with a degree with undergraduate degree in biology and was supposedly going to go to medical school, and all of a sudden got the business bug. They offered him a spot to play another year of college lacrosse at another place, and he's doing his MBA now. So he made
Oh
like a
wow.
sharp left turn. So
Well, you never know what the future
you
holds,
never
right? And
know.
and I think that's part of why, honestly, that's why the what we're doing now is so important, because we have got to leave our existing landscape in a better place,
Hmm.
and we need good young leaders to help us do that, because nobody's here forever. Um, and so, yeah, my hope is that the next generation inherits something a little bit better than maybe what we inherited.
I agree. I absolutely agree. So this has been an absolute pleasure. Any last parting words that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I would actually. I think I've been reading a lot on creating movements and cascades
Hmm.
and not necessarily revolutions per se, but one of the things that has always piqued my curiosity with our colleagues is a lot of times everybody's kind of working on their own and reliant and self-reliant rather and
Hmm.
autonomous. I'm going to make the case that we need to think about the power of one plus one or the power of a handful and have those mini networks. The people that you can count on if something isn't going well to collaborate with to back you up.
Hmm.
So that if and when we get to the point where we can have some bigger movements and changes, these little networks can then connect. And all of a sudden, we've got not just a handful of people being noisy, but thousands, if not millions, of people being noisy in the same direction. And I think that's when we're going to see some significant change.
That's really special. How do you propose that these kind of little networks start to form?
Yeah, stay connected with your colleagues.
Yeah,
Talk about things. If you're frustrated with something, don't just bury it and go home with it.
sure.
Vent, collaborate, have conversations, stay connected, join an organization. Here, I'll stand up again. Join an organization like Medicine
Medicine
Forward.
forward. Yep.
Yeah, and you'll be connected to a whole bunch of people. And if you feel like you're stuck or you feel like you're being scapegoated or whatever, reach out.
Yeah,
There are a
sure.
bunch of us who can connect you with lawyers or mentors or senior physicians. We have got to support one another.
Absolutely agree. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure, Todd. Really, I mean, it's been an honor to discuss with you and for you to share all of the wonderful things that you're doing with the audience. And I really look forward to continued friendship with you as well and working with you. So stay tuned, everybody. Our next episode is probably going to include a wonderful patient and doctor advocate. So we'll see you soon. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye. And I don't know how to stop it.